All right, welcome to this week's episode of Vets in Real Estate Podcast, where I am joined by a former West Pointer, now turned into real estate mogul. So stay tuned. All right, Schuyler, thank you so much for joining us today and willing to share your time. And I find it interesting that the more and more of these I do, it's more officers, and especially those that have spent time either at an academy or at a very high level military school. When I kind of jumped into this, I didn't anticipate it. I thought it'd be a lot more enlisted folks like myself and not as many officers.
Yeah, well, the officers like to talk more. The enlisted guys get stuff done. So that's why you're attracting all the talkers.
Maybe, but I'll say that it's been fascinating as I've kind of got to dive into different veterans' business. The officers, y'all do things just a little bit different than what some of it listed. I think we're much more of a big hammer, big smash, and with some of the officers, it kind of makes sense, right? For what we did in the service, there's a little more finesse, a little more planning, a little more strategy involved in some of these.
Yeah. I tell people all the time, one of my unique strengths as a businessman is to look at my business and see the terrain board. A lot of our prep for a mission, we would stand around a terrain board, talk about, well, what's the most probable outcome? What's the most dangerous outcome? And, what does the competition have that we don't? What do we have they don't? And, we stand around that terrain board. Well, when I approach business, I do the exact same thing. I think of like, all right, well, what's the situation here? And I think before we take action. And, in the military, I know you know this, but you think before you take action when lives are at stake. So
Sure.
if we just brought that little bit of thinking into business, we would make better decisions. And not everybody does that. A lot of people just react or just get going. And action's beautiful, but thinking before you take action, that's a great thing.
Yeah. So tell us more about what you did in the service. I know we talked about you being at West Point, but what did you do after commissioning?
Yeah, well, interesting enough, right after I graduated from West Point, I got to play baseball. So I got drafted by the Detroit Tigers, and we were at a time of war, and so I played my season. And at West Point, they teach you to desire to serve. So I had that bug in me from the beginning, even though a dream came true and I got to play baseball at the highest level. My buddies were serving, my younger brother was serving overseas. And so I told the Detroit Tigers I wasn't going to come back. And they understood. They knew who they were getting when they drafted me. But I went into the military and I was a scout. I shot a gunnery with tanks. But the majority of the time that I was in, I was in scout platoons, kind of with light infantry folks. So I was a tanker, I guess, by trade, but I was with light units, and that's kind of the mission I did in both Iraq and Afghanistan, was those light infantry type patrols and things like that.
Okay, yeah, definitely a worthwhile. I was aviation guys, so we talked to the scouts folks on a regular basis. Where, hey, come look at this, or hey, we got this, and come load up before it becomes a bigger issue. So it would definitely worked alongside y'all's teams. Quite regularly. So you did your time in the military. Was real estate always on the horizon? That was the dream after all that. I mean, if you played professional baseball, I mean, it feels like real estate is a little different arena, right?
A much different arena. I got an engineering degree, and I knew enough about engineering that after 6 years of walking and shooting, you don't go be an engineer. So I did what a lot of people do coming out of the military. I hit pause and I went back to school. And school helps you transition your military experience into the business world, and makes things you learn gives you the ability to apply those. But also the school gives you time to think. And so I went and got my MBA at the University of Texas here, the Macomb School of Business, and that not only gave me time to think about, well, what are my strengths? What do I want to do in this next period of my life? But it also put me in a position where companies started to recruit me. And so I got to visit with the consulting firms. I got to visit with, you name it, the typical folks that come after the MBA grads. And all of that was great. But I got some advice from a mentor of mine that said, look, find the leader that you want to work for. Don't necessarily pigeonhole yourself into a specific job. And I found, and let me just say, I think it's great to pick real estate and then find the leader that you want to work for within real estate. But I was just looking for the right leader at the time. And the lady that recruited me to Keller Williams, to the corporate office here in Austin, Texas, she was the leader that I was after. And so she happened to be in real estate. And that's what got my first step into real estate, was really just going to work for her. And, and then obviously that started a whole, 15-year journey at this point.
Yeah. So what was it about her as a leader that drew you there? Because that's a little different approach than we hear. It's usually go get in real estate, go find a broker who's going to give you great splits. And that's usually the discussion and the end of it. You went the opposite direction altogether.
Yeah. It really was. And I can't take credit for that approach. Someone told me that would be the best way to start off as successful outside of the military. And so I was looking for someone that was going to be a good coach, that cared about their team, and that when I sat down with them, I felt that kind of that power that you feel when you sit down with a higher ranking officer or non-commissioned officer. Like when you sit down with a command sergeant major, or when you sit down with a full bird colonel or general, like they don't even have to say anything. You just feel the power in the room, and they're thoughtful, they're intelligent, they're high character and integrity, that they're motivated. That feeling, I wanted that feeling from a leader outside of the military, so that I didn't have this like big hiccup and kind of leadership example. And I met with a lot of people. I really did. I met with a lot of people, and most of the time I felt a little discouraged because I would have to report to someone that just didn't impress me. Now they had the higher job, and they would, of course, would get my respect, at least from an authoritative standpoint. But they didn't impress me with that power that they gave off, or that intelligence, that character, all the things I just said. And she did. And so I was impressed. And then it became from looking for the right person to, well, how can I get this job? And then I started running after that as hard as I could.
Okay. So, and what did you do, I guess, while you went over to KWRI? What were you doing on that side?
Yeah, I ran, so initially I ran the commercial real estate department. And then I grew into a role that they called the membership director. And so KW Commercial, the luxury division, the farm and ranch division. We had a young professionals. We had all these little niche divisions that individually they're 10 to 20,000 agents. All of those divisions had a leader, and I became the guy that led those leaders of those divisions. So it was probably one step away from the chief operating officer. But it was, I ran these divisions in the field.
So you go from kind of similar to me, from a corporate role, or at least kind of corporate real estate, into being an agent. How did that transition? Obviously got to be a little bit different, going from corporate America in real estate, now to kind of hustling and trying to sell a house.
Yeah, well, I'm very fortunate that it happened, but in the moment it was an unfortunate situation. The leader that I respected and I was following, she decided to retire, which, it was her time, and that was great. But that means I inherited a new leader. And that ended up not being the person that I wanted to work for. And we both knew it. We weren't a good fit for one another. And that's okay. I mean, I've learned that now. That's okay, And so he chose to water down my role there at the company on a Friday afternoon in a meeting with him and his HR director and his legal rep. And he's like, hey, it's okay. I'm going to pay you the same amount of money. You're just going to do less, right? So it's kind of a demotion and responsibility, even though I was going to make the same money. And I'd asked him, well, is there any way for me to regain the responsibility that I have in this company? And I happened to be applying for the chief operating officer role there. And I was very happy there. I really was. I loved the team and I was well known and I'd had some success. And he said, not at this time. And so I left. That was Friday afternoon at like 4:30 in the afternoon. I left. And every executive, at least when I was there at KW, every executive had their license, because we're agent led. That's kind of the token or the slogan we had there at the corporate office. And so I had my license. And so I went home that weekend and my wife and I, we talked about what happened. We prayed about the situation. And I had been, look, this wasn't the first time I asked her either. I had been asking like, hey, let me go do what I watch these other guys do in the agent world. Like, I know I can do well at it. And so finally, after this all happened, she's like, why don't you go do it? And that's all I needed to hear was, why don't you go do it? So Monday morning, I was waiting for my boss there first thing, and right when he walked in, I gave him my resignation, and that kind of began my journey for going into an agent. I mean, I didn't have this like planned out journey that I was going to go do. Really, the plan happened in 24 hours after my wife gave me the thumbs up, and we went and got busy.
So what was, obviously not planning any of this makes it even more interesting to see how well you've done, right? I guess, what was the biggest culture shock, I guess, coming from, leading soldiers to being a leader in corporate America to now going and trying to convince people to trust you to go buy and sell their home?
I would say the biggest culture shock, well, there's two that I'll share. One is, and everybody will know this when I share it, because we all go through it, is when you go from a salaried position to a commission-only position, that's a big culture shock. To know that the only thing that comes in to your bank account is things that you actually close on. That took some adjusting to. I had a lot of anxiety around it because I didn't know when I was going to get paid. And even some of these deals I was putting under contract, they would fall apart. I mean, the game. It would fall apart. And really not even for my reason. They would just fall apart. And so things that you thought you were going to get paid on, you wouldn't. And that was tough. So that took a lot of adjustment for me. And I had to create some values and some new processes to manage not only my life professionally around that, but personal life too. We had to sharpen our pencils on how we lived our life. And then the second culture shock was, and this had already happened before. So when I went from the military to the corporate America, I went from being the airborne ranger, combat veteran, built to be a warrior, to, hey, you don't know anything. I took the job, right? I had no business experience. I was a rookie again. And then I built up this experience in corporate America that made me productive. And when I went out into the field, I went right back to zero again. But at least I'd been through it once. But yeah, when you go to sit down with someone to get their commitment to you as a realtor, the first time, they say, well, tell me about your experience. And you say, well, actually, you're going to be my first transaction. Like, that's a hard objection to overcome. When they say, well, why should I go with someone else that has 20 years of experience?
Sure.
It's easy to win that question. The other one, when you don't have any experience and you're relying really on trust, or let me prove it to you, like that was a tough thing too. That was a culture shock because I had to humble myself, really, really over communicate, over prepare, over deliver value until I had some success. And we try to do that to this day, but we don't have to do that to win business now. We've got a track record and we're doing really well as a team. And we can use our history to speak for the future. I didn't have a history to speak for what I was going to provide to them. So that was tough too. And we all go through it.
Yeah. It sounds like in each of those transitions, you kind of step back just a little bit because, at least from an experience standpoint, you kind of had to step back because while you had the leadership and the knowledge and those kind of things, it was some of the experience. And LinkedIn actually does a study every year that brings this up. It talks about military veterans typically, when they get out, take a position 1 to 2 positions below what they did. They sit there for about 2 to 3 years, and then they just explode in where they go from there. And it sounds like you kind of had that twice, had that same position where you went from leading soldiers to kind of being the new guy again, and then watch that explode, and then same thing, kind of step back and being the new guy selling real estate again, and then watch that explode as well.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, in the military, there's a standard, right?
Mm-hmm.
That there's a minimum standard, and then there's the standard for the great soldiers, and then there's also standard operating procedures that go along and are very clear with your job in the military, and that organization equips us all that have been through it with the unique ability to not only crave for setting standards and exceeding them, but also that second half of creating operating procedures to make us our best. And, I didn't know it until my first job outside of the military. But when I go to do something new, I know everything is done by a model. And there's people out there that are doing what I need to do really well, and they're operating by a model. Whether they communicate that or not, that's person to person. But from the outside looking in, I can see how they're operating. I can take their model, tweak it maybe for my own personal strengths or to mitigate some of the weaknesses that I have personally, but then go deploy that in my own business and achieve success really quickly because the model's already proven. And in real estate, these great agents have been doing things not all that different from one another for a very long time. And so as an agent, what I did was I kind of said, okay, I'm going to go start something new. I'm a rookie, but there is a great way to do this. And if I just look at the best agents, if I read the books that explain the models of how other great agents have done it, and then I document what they're doing, and then I just go try to do it as well or better than them, I'm going to have similar success. And that's what I did. And that's where I had some confidence to kind of take that big step, is because I knew that I had strengths that were developed very young in my professional life in the military to not only create operating procedures, but also create standards that I know if I met or exceeded them, I was going to have success with it. And that's what I do every day. I hit my model, and I hit it with high standards and a lot of activity and professionalism. And if you do the right things as often as you possibly can in business, you will be rewarded financially for it. I mean, it's just a matter of doing the right things over and over and over again.
And that's one of the things I appreciate coming out of the KW model. I'm a KW alumni myself, right? Is there's such a focus on the systems, the processes, the building your system to run the right way. And while I think every brokerage talks that, I think that's one of the things that KW does extremely well. Is when you take your first set of classes, it is instilled in you to set up this system. It may not have to look exactly like this system, but it should resemble this system and what works best for you. And it sounds like, really coming from the military in that aspect, KW was a good fit for you, pulling that information, teaching kind of the same thing they taught us in the military with that real estate twist.
Yeah, it felt comfortable, felt natural. It wasn't all that different. The words were different,
sure,
but the day to day and what made a unit in the military successful is a very similar thing that makes a business successful on the outside.
So now that you said 15 or so years into this, how are you seeing your business now? What does that look like? Obviously, from day one, trying to get that first listing, struggle, pain, getting to that point. Where are you at now?
Yeah, trying to organize talent around me, attract talent around me, and make them better, and try to get them pursuing and accomplishing the goals they have so that I can accomplish my goals as the leader. And we've been very blessed to be surrounded by some extraordinary people, and it's allowed me to not only grow a great real estate team that has been recognized and received some awards. We have a really great construction company that we stood up in 2019 that's building luxury homes here in Austin, and it's having a lot of success. And every employee that's in that business, their families are blessed by the business and the success of that. So we're really excited about that. And then we have a laundromat business that started as solving a real estate need by putting that business in there. But now we have 3 highly successful laundromat stores they're large stores, and we've franchised that concept. And so now we're growing that laundry concept by selling franchises, and of course we're opening more corporate stores too. But we're pouring fuel on that, and so my job now has become, well, what are the things that I can do day to day to train, equip, and motivate the talent on our team, to keep them focused on the priority, to accumulate more talent to us, and then to grow our database. Because this is a real estate podcast. No matter what role you play in real estate, the size of your database matters. You want a bigger business, grow your database. And so now, my job is to go and just grow our database day to day. And so that's really what I'm focused on is influence, not only influence with our team, but influence outside of our team and with our clients and everyone else.
I'm curious, and as you're growing into a laundromat business, that's a little bit different than real estate. Is there anything that from your time in real estate that transitioned well for the laundromat business? I mean, obviously a little different, but
I think every retail business, the first step of whether you're going to succeed or not is a real estate decision. If you're a brick and mortar retail, and laundry is. And so, yeah, I think that my experience in real estate uniquely qualified me to be a strong laundromat operator. Because at the very beginning, I'm picking great real estate for that. And I understand what makes a great co-tenant in a retail center. I understand what a reasonable lease is and what levers to pull so that we can get the right financial win for both sides, right? The landlord and the tenant. From my construction experience, I know more or less what it's going to cost to, in tenant improvements to build the space out, the way we need it. So I think, and then just look, every business uses a sales funnel. And in real estate, that's what we do. We build sales funnels and we attract buyers of our product. We capture them, we convert them to closings, and it's not all that different when you go to the laundry world. You've got to attract people to come into your laundromat. You've got to convert them into excited fans of your operation there, and then you got to convert them to close transactions and run a profitable company. I mean, those things, they're not all. Again, the words are different and they look different, but the model of running a successful business, whether it's real estate or construction or laundry, the core pieces of that aren't all that different. Certainly from the leadership perspective.
No, I would agree. And personally, my wife and I made our first investment in a business not long ago. So it's kind of resonating with me a little bit because as we're looking at what this business was struggling with, I was like, oh, you need accounting? Well, I can do that. You need marketing? Oh, I can do that. You need sales? I can do that. And I was, what you're saying resonates because we're kind of coming to the same thing. I was like, am I just too cocky? Do I think I know everything? Or are these skills really transferable? And at least listening to you, it sounds like they really are transferable. That core of understanding business and real estate can go really anywhere.
Yeah, I mean, you really can, Will. And so I would just say, I used to look around at other professionals and think oh man, how are they achieving success in what they do? And can I model their behavior to make myself a stronger producer? Well, now, let me tell you, when I walk into HEB, I'm like, how did HEB get these people to come in here and buy these groceries? So when they set up all these aisles and they set up these points where they're making their transactions and how they restock their inventory and how are they doing all that stuff? And so now I'm walking into every business and I'm thinking, I'm thinking retail too. So I'm not only thinking leadership and I'm not only thinking sales now, but now I'm thinking, all right, well, I can learn something from HEB. I can learn something from these restaurants. So now and I think this is a core kind of principle in what I believe makes people successful is that they're thinking and that they don't stop thinking. They're always thinking. They're always turned on. And look, I'm a husband of 20 years and a father of 2 kids. And the success in that area of my life means the world to me. It means more than anything. And yet I'm this guy that walks around thinking all the time, looking for models that if I can grab that model and implement it into my business, if I can grab that model and hand it to one of my teammates and they can run with it to make us better, I'm doing it. And sometimes I just grab a piece of paper and I write it, I scribble it down and put it in my pocket for later. And it's like, cause I saw something that's going to work and we go release that.
Yeah. No, I think we've kind of similar there. Now it's my drive home is ChatGPT and I'm dictating everything I'm thinking so I can just brain dump everything. It's there, and I don't know. ChatGPT's got to think I'm a weirdo with some of the ideas and things I start talking about. But it's amazing that as you're in the business, you think about this all the time, and we see the statistics, especially in real estate, that depending on the state and all that kind of stuff, roughly 80% of agents don't make it to their first renewal. They don't stick around. They don't do it. But I would say a lot of it is those aren't treating it like a job, but the others aren't treating it like it's a business. They're not thinking, how do I make this better? How do I do this? As long as I get a couple closings this month, I'm okay. And they're not almost obsessed with thinking and being turned on to business and making those things happen, which it sounds like it's exactly what you've been doing.
Yeah. Well, and listen, I mean, your listeners that are planning to go into real estate, it's not easy. But again, for the veterans, we're uniquely qualified to make it through all that. I mean, listen, I know basic training wasn't easy. I know going to combat wasn't easy. I know when we go into trainings in the field and you sleep in the dirt, and you know what, and you choose not to lay out all your stuff to sleep more comfortably because you don't want to pack it up in the morning because you don't have enough time to do all that. Like, I know what all that feels like. And we just sucked it up. It was part of the mission. And you can complain about it, but it's not going to get you anywhere. And so we just sucked it up and we hit the standard, right? Every day we hit the standard. And I think veterans, they've got that like suck it up part of their mentality that a lot of people have never had to suck it up before. And that, I mean, they're going to quit before us. And so we're not going to quit. We're going to go until we just punish ourselves without being able to get up off the ground. And you know what? In real estate, everything is like a 90-day cycle. So if you punish yourself with activity for 90 days, on the 91st day, you're likely to get a win. And then you're going to get a win behind that. And then you're going to start to build momentum. But you got to get through the 90 days of just extreme persistent activity in the right things, right? Because a lot of activity in the wrong things, that's going to get you nowhere. But if you keep it focused on the priority and you stick to it, it's going to come. It's a matter of time. To you're like the stats guy. Like, the statistics are going to tell you if you keep doing the right things, eventually it's going to pay off. It just is. The numbers are going to work out in your favor. 6% of the world buys and sells a house every single year. So can you do the things that get you a piece of that 6%? I mean, we talk about that all the time on our team.
I didn't know that stat. 6% of the world buys or sells or buys a home every year. That's good numbers. And it makes sense if you think about it. It is a small percentage, and you're fighting for that percentage.
Well, but like I kind of led the conversation off with, if you got 100 people in your database, 6% is 6 people, right? If you got 1,000 people in your database, all right, well, now that's 60. If you got 10,000, okay, now you got a big business, even if you don't win the 6% that are already in your database.
Right.
And that's as simple as you can do it. Can you grow your database every single day and communicate to it effectively enough so that they know you're overqualified to take care of them and they reach out to you when they have a need? Like, that's as simple as or as hard as it has to be. You can make it that simple. But that's hard, right? I mean, you know this because you're doing this. Like, it's hard to do that every single day.
with all these nuggets you're dropping and the wisdom, like you should write a book. I'd imagine, it's got to be a bestseller at some point, right?
Yeah, yeah, we'll see. I'm sure praying for that.
So,
Yeah, yeah. We wrote a book, and I'll tell you the story of that too, Will, because
yeah.
it's a business story. And there's a spiritual side to it too, but I'll just give you the business side. My job is to build our database and generate leads for this business. And it's not only leads for buy and sell real estate, but it's also leads for talent. And to do that in today's world, you have to become an influencer. So I went and read 4 or 5 influencer books. That's usually what I do. When I got to go solve a business problem, I'll usually go buy a bunch of books and I'll read them as fast as I can and try to find the models in those books. Well, part of the model that I hadn't done yet was write a book to become an influencer. And so, you know what, if that's part of the model and it just takes work to write a book, then I'll just write a book. And so that's what I did. I wrote a leadership book because that's where all my best stories are, in leadership. And we titled it The Steady Leader. And yeah, I mean, my goal with that, not only to help a lot of people, because you don't make money with book sales. You help people by sharing your journey with them, and then you grow your database. And so our goal with that is, 100% to be a bestseller, because we think it's a great book, and there's models in there that I know will help every leader of every business out there. Be more steady, anyways. But I think that that's going to help fathers be more steady with their families and leading them. I think it's going to help investors be more steady in investing, and I think it's going to be help leaders of businesses be more steady in leading their businesses. But bringing it all the way back to real estate, it's going to grow our database, and it's going to surround us with more talent. It's going to help me have more conversations with people, and that becomes your job every single day. Is, well, what can I do every day to become more influential, so that I can grow my team and help them achieve the goals that they have for their life, while you're achieving what you have for your life.
So if any of our listeners wanted to find your book, I'm assuming Amazon and all the usual places where they can go?
Oh, yeah. Of course, you can go to Amazon and search Steady Leader. You can also go to SchuylerWilliamson.com. And, all of our opportunities are there to engage with us. Every single morning I read and I journal, and I post that journal post on LinkedIn. So if you're not a big reader of books, but you just want to get like the gold from it and that's it, well, just follow me on LinkedIn and you'll get that every single morning. But yeah, one of those 3 spots, you should be able to find us. Okay. And then you can go to steadyleader.com too.
Fair.
We have the book there.
Fair enough.
Steady Leader. Yeah.
So you've hit on this a couple of times, but you've kind of mentioned kind of spirituality and faith a few times, and I'm assuming this plays into who you are. When you said you were making the transition from corporate to being an agent, you and your wife sat down and prayed on it. You've mentioned a few other times about kind of spirituality and those things. I'm assuming that plays a pretty big role in your life and, of course, within business.
Yeah, I mean, first off, thank you, Will, for asking me. And yeah, I believe that. Well, let me back up. My kids often ask me, why are we here on this earth? Like, they love to ask me these big questions, right? That's what kids do. And I try to keep my answers always simple for them, because they're young. But it doesn't have to be any more complicated than this. We're on this earth to love our God and love each other, love His children, right? And I know that, and I believe that the gifts that we have, this business that I have, the brain that I have, the book that I wrote, everything that I have, this life that I get to wake up and do every single day, the fact that I just wake up, I know all of that is a gift. And we are called to steward our gifts. And that doesn't mean keep them for ourselves and drive Ferraris and make sure we look right. Mm-hmm. No, that means share the gifts that you have with others. And yeah, I'm hungry to grow a big business because I want influence. And if I have influence, then I know I can share with them the faith that's brought so much love into my life, so much freedom, and just beauty. And I talk, the title of the book is A Steady Leader. A big part of being a steady leader is being spiritually healthy. And so, I love to talk about that. And we talk about it on my team, and it's driving the big purpose of like what we're doing and why we're hustling so hard.
That's good. We've interviewed quite a few people here, and it's interested in seeing, it's kind of a couple themes that I keep seeing come out over and over and over. One, it's kind of that service of beyond yourself. And I think in the military that's instilled in us, and that doesn't surprise me the least bit. We're always trying to do more and more. The other thing that I think has been interesting, and you're hitting on it as well, is that either if they're doing it right or doing it wrong, it's that kind of self-help, taking time for yourself, where, when I got in the military, it's like, no more 6:30 PT formation. I can be chubby. Like, it's great, right? But yet so many the guests we've had so far have been, I'm still up at 5:30. I'm still going to go work out. I'm still going to do this, or I get up and I meditate, or I'm journaling, or they're investing in that self time to make sure they're right. And I think in so much of what we see with this influencer culture, this hustle culture, we don't see that side of it. We don't see that, we see the Elon who's everywhere, but we don't see Elon sit back and take time for himself. He probably does. He'd have to, but we don't see that, right? And it's interesting that so many guests we've had have pointed that same thing out, that I've got to take time for me, or when I wasn't taking time for myself, it was killing me.
We write it. So the first section of the book is lead yourself. And I believe to be healthy, you have to be mentally, spiritually, and physically healthy. If you're not healthy in all three regards, then you won't have the endurance that God's actually given you the capability to have. I mean, it's going to be less than what you're capable of. And so you need to be healthy so that your endurance is there. Because if you can spend more time at your peak performance level, you have the endurance to stay at that level longer, man, like you fulfill your potential. And that all requires you to lead yourself.
Yeah. Well, Schuyler, thank you so much. These were a lot of great gems, and I hope our audience does take a chance to check out your book. I'm going to take a look at it as well. I do the same thing where I want to read and figure it out, other people's models. So I'll I don't know, maybe I'll be the next Schuyler Williamson, and you'll see me down here in San Antonio, right? But appreciate it. Thank you so much for your time. We do get questions in the chat and all that, so I hope you're more than willing to jump in and answer some of those questions as they come up, and open to working with us again.
Yeah, I would love that, Will. I'm grateful again, and thank you. I mean, keep asking the spiritual question. That's an important one.
Yeah, appreciate it. Thank you so much.